Good morning, everyone. My name is John Rickzel Macalos from BSHM3A, and I am here to report about the tourism public sector from the Philippine Tourism Law Chapter 6. Our next slide is all about the learning objectives. Identify the various government agencies involved in the development and promotion of the tourism industry as well as their functions. Describe the relations of these agencies with one another and explain the possibility of public service as a career in the industry. And as for our topic outline, we will be discussing the following from the Department of Tourism to the Republic Act number 7616 creating the Philippine Economic Zone Authority. In 1973, the Philippine government recognized the need to realign efforts to trade promotion and tourism development. This led to Presidential Decree number 189 on May 11, 1973, establishing the Department of Tourism to boost national development by attracting foreign visitors and fostering Filipino cultural appreciation and pride. The Department of Tourism, established under Presidential Decree number 189, is the government's lead agency for policy-making planning and coordinating the development of domestic and international tourism. The Department of Tourism's key function includes overseeing government tourism activities, removing travel barriers and streamlining regulations, promoting the Philippines internationally, reviewing and approving tourism-related projects and incentives, representing the government in tourism conference and agreements, accrediting travel agents, tour operators, and guides, classifying accrediting tourism-related facilities and services, and performing other functions as mandated by law. This means that local government units now regulate, license, and supervise tour operators and accommodations. However, this power does not include prohibiting operations without due process. Regulation means control and oversight, not suppression or prohibition. The next slide talks about the Tourism Authority. Presidential Decree 564 on October 2, 1974 revised the Philippine Tourism Authority's charter, originally established under PD 189. This strengthened the PTA to better unify and integrate tourism development efforts between government and private sector. The PTA's general powers include implementing the Department of Tourism policies on tourism development, promoting integrated resort complexes in designated tourist zones, assisting private enterprises in tourism projects, and operating and maintaining essential tourist facilities alone or in partnership with the private sector. The Intramuros Administration. Intramuros, a historic landmark of Manila for 400 years, required preservation and restoration. To achieve this, Presidential Decree number 1616 on April 10, 1979 established the Intramuros in administration to oversee its development and maintenance. The Intramuros administration often faces challenges balancing development and preservation. While businesses push for modernization, it enforces strict regulation, especially under public pressure, to protect Intramuros' historical integrity. Now let's talk about the government agencies. First, we have the Parks Development Committee, or the NPDC. It oversees the development, maintenance, and preservation of national parks, including Luneta and Quezon Memorial Circle. Then we have the National Historical Institute, or the NHI, responsible for the preservation and protection of national historical sites, monuments, and landmarks. And then we also have the National Commission for Culture and Arts, or the NCCA. They lead the agency for promoting and preserving Philippine arts, culture, and heritage. Then the Philippine Convention and Visitor Corporation, or the PCVC, a non-profit agency under the Department of Tourism that promotes the Philippines as a prime tourism and convention destination. And then we also have the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, which I'm sure that we are all familiar with. It's the central bank of the Philippines responsible for the monetary policy, financial stability, and the currency insurance. Then the National Economic and Development Authority, or the NEDA, the government's economic planning agency, formulating policies for sustainable and national development. The Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, also known as PAGCOR, regulates the operations and gaming establishments and generating revenue for government programs. And then finally, we have the Department of Environmental and Natural Resources, also known as the ENR. They manage the country's natural resources and implements policies on environmental protection and conservation. Now let us talk about the Department of Labor and Employment functions. It enforces labor laws to protect workers and regulate employer and employee relations, develops policies and programs for manpower training and utilization, recommends labor legislation for workforce improvement, and protects workers' rights locally and overseas, ensuring fair employment terms and welfare services. An example of this is the Department of Public Works and Highways. The Department of Public Works and Highways serves as the government's engineering and construction arm, ensuring safe, efficient, and high quality infrastructure development. And also the Department of Transportation and Communication. The Department of Transportation and Communication oversees policy, planning, and regulation to develop reliable transportation, communication networks, and efficient postal services. On the next slide, it talks about the attached agencies of the DOTC. First is the LTO. It regulates motor vehicle registration, licensing, and operation. Then we have the LTFRB. It issues and regulates permits for public and land transport services. Then we have the Marina. It oversees maritime industry development and regulation. The ATO. It manages civil aviation operations, inspections, and airport maintenance. The CAB. It regulates air transport economics and oversees air carriers. The LRTA handles construction operation and maintenance of light rail transit. The MRTC developed the MRT3 under a build operate transfer agreement, and the PNR manages the nationwide railroad system. Now let us shift our attention to the Department of Trade and Industry, also known as the DTI. Under the Executive Order 133, the DTI coordinates and promotes trade, industry, and investments. It drives economic growth through industrial strategies, liberations, deregulation, and trade expansion policies. Then we have the Board of Investments, also known as the BOI, under the Omnibus Investment Code of 1987. The BOI regulates and promotes investments in the Philippines. It prepares the annual investment priorities plan and enforces regulations to implement the code. On the next slide, we have the Philippine Economic Zone Authority. Established under Republic Act No. 7916 on July 25, 1994, PEZA coordinates and oversees special economic zones aiming to develop selected areas into industrial, commercial, and financial hubs with skilled workers and efficient services. Then we have the Department of Foreign Affairs, the DFA. The DFA leads the Philippines' foreign policy and diplomatic service, playing a key role in the nation's history and international relations. Then the Department of Interior and Local Government, the DILG. The DILG assists the President in supervising local governments, advises on policies for public order and safety, and enforces laws promoting local autonomy and community empowerment. The Bureau of Food and Drugs, the BFAD, under the Department of Health, regulates the registration of processed foods, drugs, medical devices, cosmetics, and hazardous household products. After that is the Bureau of Customs. Under the Republic Act 1937, the Bureau of Customs collects revenues, prevents smuggling, controls trade vessels, and enforces tariff laws and oversees import and export cargo. We also have the Philippine Coast Guard, created under Republic Act 5173. The Coast Guard enforces maritime laws, ensures safety at sea, and maintains navigation, aids, and rescue operations. The Professional Regulatory Board for Custom Brokers, established under Republic Act 9280, the board standardizes customs education, regulates the profession, and oversees licensing and practice. The Nayong Pilipino Foundation, founded under PD 37, 1972, NPF promotes research in social sciences, humanities, and culture development as a non-profit public corporation. Then lastly, we have the Tourism Enterprise Zone Authority. Under the Tourism Act, TEZA manages tourism zones, regulates enterprises, and grants tax incentives. And that would conclude my report. Thank you so much for listening.